Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. You know, on this show, we've been highlighting a disturbing new trend on the right where Republicans and their allies play footsie with fringe conspiracy theorists by attempting to smear Democrats as sympathetic to child abuse. It's a dog whistle to QAnon supporters who believe that the Democratic Party is made up of a Satan-worshipping cabal of pedophiles who run a child sex trafficking ring. That is their belief. Now, not to be outdone, last night, Republican star Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who has her finger on the pulse of the Republican base as well as anyone, took the rhetoric a step further, doing away with any pretense and just explicitly calling her political opponents pedophiles.
The Democrats are the party of pedophiles. The Democrats are the party of princess predators from Disney. The Democrats are the party of teachers, elementary school teachers trying to transition their elementary school age children and convince them they're a different gender. This is the party of their identity, and their identity is the most disgusting, evil, horrible things happening in our country. And that's why we have to say it.
Now, Greene may be the most extreme Republicans in terms of that rhetoric, her willingness to invoke QAnon, but she is far from the only one pushing that exact line of attack. In fact, it's become mainstream. It was the entire basis of the Republican smears against Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, soon to be the first black woman to sit on the Supreme Court in this nation's history, with the vote for her confirmation coming as early as tomorrow. One of the prolific smear peddlers was Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee.
I do want to go back to the issue about the child predators. Do you believe child predators are misunderstood? So is it your position that child pornography offenders are not pedophiles? Do you believe that it matters to the children and their parents who suffer abuse, what motivation those abusers had? I want to make certain that we protect children and that we continue to do our best effort to protect children. I also want to make certain that we're going to have judges on the federal bench and justices that are going to protect those rights of children.
Again, the context here is clear, right? That's just like, I don't know, a few degrees more subtle than Marjorie Taylor Greene, but they're doing the same thing. Now, if Senator Blackburn is acting in good faith, which seems doubtful to me, but if she is concerned about, as I keep saying, the very, very real issue of child sexual abuse, then it's odd that she doesn't at least appear publicly to be using her power to do anything about a very disturbing situation that's been happening in her home state house. State representatives in Tennessee have been working on a bill known as HB 233. Now, that's obviously a Republican-dominated legislature, and it's basically an anti-gay marriage bill. It would allow the state to make an additional marriage category only eligible to opposite-sex couples who do not want to be part of the same institution that allows gay people to tie the knot. Now, that's bigoted and bad on its own right, and it's an indication, and this should be very clear, of just how much right-wing forces right now are gathering themselves and champing at the bit to roll back marriage equality. That is coming. But that's not even the worst part of that particular piece of legislation. The House version of the bill, as it was introduced, didn't include an age minimum. Yeah, it means it could pave the way to legalize child marriage, like child brides. Again, I'm not making this up. I thought this was not true when I first read the story, but just listen to the sponsor of the bill, Republican State Representative Tom Leatherwood.
All this bill does is give an alternative form of marriage for those pastors and other individuals who have a conscientious objection to the current pathway to marriage.
Is there no age limit in this bill?
Well, again, with my understanding, I think it would be 18 is the way this would be construed.
Yeah, I'll ask us, but I just want to make clear just what the testimony is. There's no age limit?
No, there's no age limit.
Okay, well, that would be I just want to make sure there wasn't an explicit age limit. My concern...
No, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. No, there is not an explicit age limit.
I've watched that several times today. What exactly are you up to here, Leatherwood? Like, there's an explicit age limit in the law at the time, as the other representative notes, but there's no explicit age limit here. Now, the other man you heard talking there is Democrat Mike Stewart. He called the bill, quote, a get-out-of-jail-free card for people who are basically committing statutory rape. Again, sounds bad to me. Also, why? What? Again, just to be clear, this is not an abstract concern. There are people out there with fringe religious beliefs who might take advantage of such a loophole in the law. For example, there's the story, somewhat infamous, of Warren Jeffs, a religious fanatic, president of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not to be confused with the regular Mormon church. He's a polygamist accused of having 78 wives, dozens of whom were underage. Back in 2007, Jeffs was convicted on charges of facilitating the marriage of a 14-year-old to her 19-year-old cousin. Again, that sounds disgusting and wrong to me. Now, that alone is pretty horrifying, but wouldn't you know it, Tucker Carlson, one of the most vocal champions of the Democrats are soft on child abuse spears, didn't see it that way, didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, back in 2009, he went out of his way to defend Jeffs.
Well, actually, he's not in prison for that. Warren Jeffs didn't marry underage girls.
No, he's in prison for facilitation of child rape.
Whatever the hell that means.
That means
he's in prison because he's weird and unpopular, and he has a different lifestyle that other people find creepy.
No, he's an accessory to the rape of children. That is a felony, and a serious one at that.
What do you mean an accessory? He's like got some weird religious cult where he thinks it's okay to, marry underage girls, but he didn't do it. Why wouldn't the guy who actually did it, who had sex with an underage girl, he should be the one who's doing life? The rapist in this case has made a lifelong commitment to live and take care of the person. So it is a little different. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Now, I'm just a humble cable news host trying to get my arms around this. A few things there. Marry there, Jeffs did marry them, not in the he married them as in they married him, but he married them, as in a transitive verb, right? And the argument here is that Jeffs is just a religious weirdo being targeted for his different beliefs, which include child brides, like a 14-year-old, and also the rapist pledged to take care of the 14-year-old, so that's fine. And that Jeffs should not be in jail for facilitating the incestuous marriage of a 14-year-old, which, again, that's a view you can have. I think it's really weird and unnerving. Just me. In a way, Tucker got his wish. In 2010, Jeffs' conviction was actually overturned. So, he was ahead of the curve there. Oh, but then, unfortunately, 1 year later, he was sentenced to life in prison after a jury found him guilty of raping a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. So, I think people are rightly concerned about the prospect of legislation that would legalize child marriage, particularly child brides. I think that's probably what would happen. You would think that being such a great defender of children that Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, of all people, after that big star turn in those hearings, in the very state where this is being proposed, would be losing her mind about this bill when it's so glaring and obvious. Given, of course, the way she lost her mind during those Judge Jackson hearings. But as far as we can tell, not a peep, not one word, not one thing in public. We actually reached out to her office today to get her thoughts on the prospective bill and what she thinks about child marriage. We haven't heard back. Weird. You'd take an opportunity to hit that softball, don't you think? But other people have been reporting about what is happening in Tennessee. In fact, it's generated some pretty negative headlines for obvious reasons. The child bride bill doesn't sound great, does it? So just today, 2 weeks after the Tennessee Republicans admitted the bill had no explicit age requirements, they passed an amendment to the bill that would require both parties to be 18 or older before getting married. Well, good. Took a little bit of work, huh? Even though its sponsor, that guy Tom Leatherwood, seems to think the amendment wasn't really necessary.
My position that the bill never would have allowed minors to be able to get married because of contracts, so forth, but I can see and understand how that might have been misunderstood.
Again, round of applause. Be clear, it's a good thing. It's good Tennessee Republicans are not legalizing child marriage. It's bad that it basically took weeks of public outcry for them to do something about it. Again, the very party that claims to be very concerned with protecting children right now, that's accusing their enemies of being literal pedophiles, wrote a bill that apparently would have allowed children to get married, and then they got caught, and after public scrutiny and backlash, they reassessed and changed the language of the bill. No thanks to Marsha Blackburn.